a lesson. So when I run into rejection, I know it's only redirection. I see the blessings right beside me. The chances of quitting are likely. I do it like I'm in my Nikes. Don't make excuses, they never excite me. Boxes, boxes, I cannot fit in the boxes. Stop it, stop it. Quitting was never an option. Exhausted, exhausted. This passion is never exhausted. And you cannot stop it. Nah, you cannot stop it.
What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. We are back. We are at the last 30 minutes. It's your guy, Hector.
9 hours later, bro.
Oh, man.
9 hours later.
I am dying. I am dying. I am here. Jacob Petruzzi is already ready to go. Our guest, Brett Siegel, is ready to rock and roll. Knicks fans, this is the last stretch. Join us for the last road call, if you must say.
Yeah, guys, we got our boy Brett Siegel rock with us last season. Made time for us on NBA trade deadline day. So you know I'm feeling special today. Philly, heck, let's bring our boy up real quick. Let me set him up here. Brett, give me a thumbs up. Let me know you're ready. He's ready. Yeah. What's up? Brett is in the building. What's up, bud?
How's it going, guys? Nice to see you again.
I'm good, man. Brother. Nice seeing you. Thank you for taking time out. Thank you for joining us today. I know you must have been crazy, going hectic, crazy day for you. How you feeling today?
I mean, you guys are probably feeling a lot better than me with the way that the Knicks executed that trade deadline. They're probably the biggest winners of today, in my opinion. They definitely addressed key needs that they had. And obviously, with all the injury concerns, OG Anunoby and Julius Randle, you go out and get Bogdanovich and you bring in Alec Burks, which was a move that many people thought that they would do. I think that's an A+ work by Leon Rose in that front office.
Facts. I mean, it's funny, Brett. We've been going live for like the last 9 hours, 10 hours. And it was crazy to see after the trade how much of the media, how many other fan bases are all giving praise to the Knicks. I mean, are we at a point that we're saying we possibly had the best trade deadline than any other team out there? Because I'm looking at a lot of these other trades. And I'm like, I don't see ones that were really splashy or ones that really filled the need the way the Knicks did.
Yeah, I think that they definitely addressed the needs that they had. And I think that when you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference, you can look in their division even. I think that they had definitely the best trade deadline there. You had the Philadelphia 76ers go out and get Buddy Hield, but they gave up a ton of their depth and they gave up a lot of draft picks in the process to go out and make those moves and cut some costs. And then obviously you have the Celtics. They added Xavier Tillman yesterday, and they go out and add Jaden Springer from the 76ers today, which I think was one of the most underrated moves of this deadline. Jaden Springer is a guy that can really play. So I'm excited to see if he gets an opportunity either with the Celtics or down the line if they move him again somewhere else. But you look at what the Knicks did. Obviously, like I said, all those injury concerns, you have Anunoby on the injury report. You have Julius Randle on the injury report. I think Jalen Brunson's out tonight after he twisted his ankle last night. So, yeah, I mean, you get two guys that you know what you're going to get from. Two veterans that can easily help you down the stretch course of the season and then into the playoffs. And now all of a sudden, the Knicks getting the 2 seed and possibly rising up and contending with the Celtics for the 1 seed is not out of the question.
Yeah. And it's crazy because, like, Knicks fans, we can be so fickle sometimes, like we want answers, but then we don't need answers because maybe answers are a bad thing, And so I think that it's just when you look at not just the trade itself, but the fact that the front office was able to keep it so hush-hush that OG actually already had the surgery, like it came out yesterday and I was just like, when we were talking about it last night, I was like, dang, how did they let that leak right before the trade deadline? But what we didn't know is that was leaked information from days ago, apparently, because he's already had the surgery, and if that was leaked out beforehand, then the cost of a Bojan or, and that Alec Burks trade probably would have cost us more because they would have known how much of a need it was for us to get someone that can replace him for these next 3 to 4 weeks. And that's if everything goes smoothly for 3 to 4 weeks. So I think that them being able to pull off that trade without any of that information being leaked makes it an even bigger trade because it would have cost us so much more. And we said it earlier, the biggest thing for me is that we got this trade and it didn't cost us a single first round pick at all, which leaves them on that trajectory that they're at where they are going to use assets if to chase that star this summer. Well, without those first round picks, it doesn't matter But now we have those, and we have assets that we can move in players that other teams will want this offseason. So, yeah, I'm happy with what we did.
And you addressed the key thing there of them not wanting to really surrender much of that draft capital and keep the future options open. I had reported early this morning that they were willing to give up at most 1 first-round pick in any deal at this trade deadline. They weren't going to give up more than one. And the 1 first-round pick that was in discussion was in a package to the Toronto Raptors for Bruce Brown. That was something that they had discussed over the course of the last week. Obviously, when the opportunity came their way to get Bogdanovich at a much cheaper price than many anticipated, that was a quick pivot move for them because Bogdanovich, his upside on offense is endless in terms of what he can do in this offense. He can play off the ball as a shooter. He can shore things up with the second unit when Julius Randle or Jalen Brunson are off the court. He can be your number one option. And we've seen that with the Detroit Pistons through the years. He's more than just a catch and shoot three-point specialist like we've seen with the Utah Jazz through the years. So I think that when you're the Knicks and you weren't wanting to give up a first-round pick, you could have gone out and get a guy like Bruce Brown, who's a utility guy, but you already have somebody like that with Josh Hart. Shooting, you bring back the guy that Tom Thibodeau loves in Alec Burks. You surrender second-round picks, which doesn't really matter to this franchise at this point, and you get rid of Quentin Grimes, who maybe that's a little bit of a loss, but at the same time, this organization didn't really have a need for him, and he wasn't really breaking into their playoff rotations at this point. So I do think that when you're the Knicks and you look at what the needs of this franchise were entering the deadline, I think they checked off all the boxes.
Yeah. Brett, with you, I would like to get your take on it. And obviously you touched on it just a little bit, but a lot of the other reporters that are out there, the other outlets, they're looking at this trade deadline like the Knicks walked away like with fool's gold, or like with the biggest heist, being able to get Bojan and Alec Burke in that deal. When you look at Bojan Bogdanovic, his contract is set up perfectly for this offseason, setting him up wonderfully so they could use him in any type of trade. What was your thoughts initially when the trade happened? Because for weeks, us Knicks fans were talking about this. We were expecting at least one player. I don't think anybody had in their eyes that 2 players would be traded to the Knicks at the trade deadline. What was your thoughts when the trade first broke?
Well, it all kind of depended on what they were going to be looking at this trade deadline. When it was Bruce Brown, obviously, you probably weren't going to be giving up 2 guys or 3 guys and getting much in return. Obviously, you could only get Brown back from the Raptors. And then another guy that they were rumored to be looking at throughout the weeks. Things didn't really gain any momentum over the last week or two pertaining to the Knicks, but Dejounte Murray, for example, would have only been Murray in that trade, and you would have had to give up assets along with Evan Fournier's contract. When you look at the Pistons and the trades that they had made prior, they not only needed to get off of contracts, but they were willing to sell pretty much anybody outside of their young core. And with that, you now get Burks, you now get Bogdanovich, and you do it in a way where you give up all these extra guys that you don't really have a need for. And like Ryan Arcidiacono, he was just there because of his ties to some of the guys on that roster. He's a good practice guy, a guy that Tom Thibodeau trusted. But at the point of a trade, you can give him up. You can cut some costs in the trade itself, and then you still get back the guys that you were looking at initially. So I think that in terms of Bogdanovich and Alec Burks coming back, of getting 2 guys instead of 1, I think it was just an opportunity that fell in their laps at a cheap cost. And when you're the Knicks and you're in a position where you are in the East that it seems a little bit volatile, but there's a straight path to the top, I think that this is a move that was necessary to make.
Love it. Speaking my language, Brett. So I've got a 2-part here for you. So I want to look at Fournier itself. Do you think Fournier actually will see playing time over there with the Pistons? Like, is he actually going to see playing time, or is he just going to be a bench guy over there like he was here?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on kind of what happens with the Pistons the rest of the season. If Cade Cunningham stays healthy and some of those other guys, because I know last night when they played and they actually beat the Sacramento Kings, they were really shorthanded in that game. They didn't have Bogdanovich. They didn't have Cade Cunningham. So in instances like that, yeah, Fournier could play. Could they potentially look to make him a part of the rotation? Absolutely. Will he make much of an impact there and be a guy that, I don't want to say resurrects his career, because Fournier is a really good player, but he wasn't playing with the Knicks. Could he potentially get back on other teams' radars? I think that's absolutely the case here. But when you're the Pistons and you're looking at this from a trade standpoint, why would you want Fournier? Well, he comes with that option next season, and you could trade him and potentially get an upgrade in the offseason, or you can simply cut him for cost relief right there and then use that cap space to potentially keep some of your young guys on longer contracts or go after somebody that you want in free agency. So I think when you're Troy Weaver and the Detroit Pistons, it was just really about keeping your options open. Bogdanovich, you saw an opportunity to capitalize on his draft value now. You get a little bit bigger contract that you can possibly do something with and move in the offseason. And now you can continue to look at and evaluate your young core there.
Nice. And then, Phil, I'll toss it to you. But the second part to it, Brett, was same thing with the Pistons. Is this a spot you think Grimes can actually be where he can flourish and they can try to unlock him a little bit more? Is this a good move for him as far as the trade goes?
Well, they certainly hope so because he's kind of the staple of this trade. You give up Bogdanovich and Burks, who are two contributors on your team, and obviously you only have 6-7 wins on the season. You're not going anywhere. You're looking ahead towards the draft, really. But those are two guys that you could have kept around. Burks in the final year of his contract, but Bogdanovich, you could have dealt him in the offseason potentially for more value. You could have kept him around and see what other teams would give you down the line. So I think to pull the trigger now shows that they have a lot of faith in a guy like Quentin Grimes, and he's a player that they do think can be a part of their main rotation next to Cunningham and next to Sar Thompson long term. So I think that there's definitely going to be more opportunity for him than Evan Fournier with the Pistons. And I think that you're going to see him wind up getting upwards of 20 minutes, 25 minutes per game as soon as he clears medicals and is able to play there. I truly do believe that there's an opportunity for Grimes in this league, and he could wind up being an impact player for them, much like how Sadiq Bey was, even though they're different positions.
Yeah.
Appreciate
and
that.
to your point, when it comes to Quentin Grimes, like Detroit is in a very, very, very low stage of rebuilding, and with guys like Burks and guys like Bojan, a lot of those trades were actually just to also get assets. When they traded for Burks for us, it was more so, hey, we're going to do this kind of as a favor kind of thing. They took them off our hands for trades that we needed to get done. So it seems like they tried something for the interim, but you can tell that their core guys are all very young and in that stage of needing to develop. You got Cade, you got Durant, you got Ivy. So these are young guys that are going to grow together. And when you look at the veteran presence of Alec Burks and Bojan, as much as I like those guys, those aren't guys that I think have the skill sets that really impact the guys that are there. There's not really much teaching opportunities, I think, for that. When you have guys like Cade and Jordan Ivey that are more explosive type players, they're not really learning from the sharpshooter vet, and so I feel like with Grimes, he comes in at a perfect time where he gets to grow with those guys, and he brings something a little bit differently in being a 3-and-D player that has played with really, really elite guys like Jalen Brunson and Randle, and he can kind of bring some of that with him, and some of that, what he learned under Tibbs, can kind of help with this Detroit team, and that all those guys can grow together. So I'm kind of excited for him because I feel like out of all the trades, I feel like it's the best fit that we've actually sent one of our players. I feel like even in the Raptors trade, yes, it was good based off the fact that it was Canada, based off the fact that it was IQ getting what he wanted in starting. But fit-wise, with the guys that are already there, I feel like this is the best fit of where we've sent a guy in these trades, because Quentin Grimes will fit pretty well there.
And the thing about the Pistons, too, is that they're not that bad of a team. Yeah, they only have 6, 7, 8 wins on the season, but there's a lot of talented guys on this roster. And like you said, they're going to continue to grow together. They're only going to get better from this point on. And a team like the Pistons, yeah, they're rebuilding, but I kind of put them in a category similar to where the Indiana Pacers were a few years ago. And granted, they had Sabonis and they were able to pull off a move for Tyrese Halliburton and really start their rise in the East to be where they are now. But you look at the Pistons, you got Cade Cunningham, you got Ivy, you got Duran, and a bunch of other young guys. I would not be shocked if they go out in the offseason and they wind up moving some of these young pieces and young assets to get another solidified either borderline all-star or all-star talent to start building with. And they were in on Pascal Siakam when he was on the market. They were in on Dejounte Murray this season as well. Maybe that's something that they revisit in the offseason. So I think that there's certainly options for Troy Weaver and this team moving forward. And I highly doubt that they're just going to stand pat and just kind of see where things go like we've seen with the Thunder through the years. I think that they're going to be very aggressive come time for the summer.
You bring up an interesting name, Dejounte Murray. That was a hot button, especially around the trade season. One name that Knicks fans, myself included, wanted the Knicks to go out there and get. When it comes to Dejounte Murray, I'm shocked that Atlanta still has him. What's your thoughts with the whole situation that happened with Atlanta, and maybe the asking price was a bit too much. What's your thoughts, Brett?
Well, they wanted to get assets back that they originally gave up for Dejounte Murray. I believe it was 3 first-round picks that they had surrendered when they originally traded for him from the San Antonio Spurs. And as a result, the asking price was 2 first-round picks. That had not changed since back in 2023. That did not change once the new year started. They wanted 2 first-round picks, and they wanted some key young talent in return. And they wanted guys that could fit alongside Trae Young long-term. So when you look at the packages that were really offered them, really the Los Angeles Lakers were the only team to aggressively pursue him, I would say, in terms of here's the offer that we have. This is what we're willing to give up. You had the New Orleans Pelicans over the last few days kind of chip in and see what the market was for Murray and see what the Hawks would be interested in from their roster. They wanted Herb Jones. The Pelicans have made it very clear that they weren't willing to give up Herb Jones at all this season. And then there was obviously the Utah Jazz kind of sniffed around a little bit with Dejounte Murray, although there was never any real traction there. It was just more of the Jazz laying out different scenarios that they were looking to do, and the Hawks weren't really interested there. So I think that if you're the Hawks with Dejounte Murray, you just extended him on that contract. It's a pretty favorable deal given his skill set. There's going to be teams looking for a two-way guard, a guy that can play on or off the ball in the offseason. You still have him for multiple years. You can still make a trade in the summer. There was just no rush to make a deal at this point. And when you look at the Lakers' offer of D'Angelo Russell, Jalen Hood-Schifino, the rookie, and then some draft picks down the line, that just did not move the needle for them. And there was no traction really on finding a third team for D'Angelo Russell when those discussions happened 3 weeks ago. That's ultimately why Dejounte Murray remains in Atlanta. And he is a guy that they like. He's a guy that Quinn Snyder likes. He's a guy that Trae Young likes. It's just a matter of whether or not the Hawks front office and ownership wants to continue to pay for this team that they have, because as of right now, the Hawks remain a pretty mediocre team in the Eastern Conference.
So I got a two-parter again, because I just, my ahada kicks in and I start thinking about stuff. Obviously, now the trade deadline's over. We're going to start, obviously, we're going to be talking crazy about the buyout market. Do you see a busy buyout market situation going on? Like, do you expect any big ones, or, I don't see the Knicks really going and grabbing somebody when we already got the depth that we have now, right? Unless, of course, injury stuff. But what do you think we're looking at with the buyouts?
Well, I could be wrong, but I think the Knicks do have one open roster slot at this point. So there's potential to make a move there and add another veteran. But yeah, I do think that this buyout market is going to be either equal to the trade deadline in terms of how busy it is, or maybe even a little bit more, because there's some talented players being rumored on the buyout market. You have Spencer Dinwiddie, for example, who's a guy that has started practically the entire season for the Brooklyn Nets. He's always been a really reliable player in the backcourt for any team he's been on. You're going to have the Mavericks and Lakers bidding for his services. Kyle Lowry, I would be absolutely shocked if he's not bought out of his contract with the Charlotte Hornets and winds up in Philadelphia, where he's from. And then you have other guys. Andre Drummond. Will the Bulls potentially buy him out after he was involved in so many different trade rumors? You have a guy like Otto Porter Jr., who was just traded to the Utah Jazz. He doesn't really fit their timeline. He's in the final year of his contract. He could be an immediate upgrade for many contending teams around this league, such as the Phoenix Suns, the Golden State Warriors, even the Los Angeles Clippers, if they wanted to add another veteran wing there. So Otto Porter Jr. is certainly in play. And then the Washington Wizards in the Eastern Conference, I think a guy like DeLon Wright could bring a lot of upside to many playoff contending teams. He's always been regarded to be a really good defensive guard. Obviously, he's lost a little bit of his step since injuries and just wear and tear in this league, but still a guy that always has a good assist to turnover ratio. You know what you're going to get with DeLon Wright. So another backcourt piece that could really help a playoff contender out there. I think that this is going to be a pretty busy buyout market. I think that we're going to see guys on the move to new teams. Even a guy like Joe Harris, who's a sharpshooter, led the league in three-point shooting a few years ago with the Brooklyn Nets. Those are guys that can immediately join these borderline fringe playoff teams like the Chicago Bulls or the Orlando Magic and really help them make a move in their conference.
Nice. And you actually touched a little bit on my second part of the question, was when it comes to the buyouts, obviously the big name thrown around right now in the Knicks world is Kyle Lowry. So you see him going back to Philly realistically?
I think that based on today's moves, with them freeing up a little bit of cap space and not really addressing their backcourt needs, I think that that's probably the most likeliest to move. We know that Lowry would be interested in reuniting with Nick Nurse in Philadelphia. He would hold a pretty significant role either next to Tyrese Maxey in the starting lineup or coming off the bench as a sixth man. He brings championship experience. That's what the 76ers kind of wanted to look for at this trade deadline. Ultimately, they weren't able to add that kind of talent. other than adding Buddy Hield, who would be a sharpshooter in their championship pursuit. But a guy like Kyle Lowry could come in, be an extra voice in that locker room, and really be a stabilizing force for them. So if he is bought out by the Charlotte Hornets, I would anticipate and anticipate all arrows being pointed towards the 76ers.
Nice.
Brett,
Phil, before we let Brett go, Hector and Phil each take one more question, and we got to let Brett out of here. He's got an appointment after this.
No, I just wanted real quick. The Golden State Warriors, when it comes to the standings right now, they're on the outside looking in, especially when it comes to the play-in. Chris Paul, injury updates. He's supposed to be coming back. Any word on Chris Paul possibly being brought out? And if Chris Paul is brought out, the Lakers possibly could be a destination for Chris Paul. What's your thoughts on Chris Paul, Brett?
Yeah, so Chris Paul is currently on the mend from his fractured hand, and he's been ramping up his activities lately. I believe he's going to be reevaluated either next week or a week and a half, sometime around the All-Star break. And there's a real chance that he comes back before the start of March for the Golden State Warriors. They looked into some trades for him at this trade deadline, trying to feel out the market of what would be available for them. And it wasn't just true of Chris Paul. They were doing so with Andrew Wiggins as well. He was a player that they were actively looking to move, but they were not going to move Andrew Wiggins just for the sake of making a trade. They were only going to do so if immediate upgrade presented itself. Pascal Siakam was a guy before he was traded to the Indiana Pacers that they were in talks with. They were talking to the Toronto Raptors about the framework of a trade for Siakam. Never really gained any momentum, but they were interested in pursuing him in the final year of his contract. Obviously, when Siakam came off the block, there was very little guys out there that Mike Dunleavy Jr. in this front office could look at and really say, yeah, they're going to make a true impact to our playoff push and potential championship push if we do get into the postseason. So that's the main reason why you see Wiggins hang around today. That's why Chris Paul is still on the roster. This roster, this coaching staff, this front office still believes that when they're at 100%, they are not what their record says they are. They believe that they're one of the better teams in the Western Conference. And when it comes time for the playoffs, if the Golden State Warriors do sneak their way in there, whether it's through the play-in tournament or they earn an actual playoff spot, nobody's going to want to play that team, and they're going to show their championship pedigree again. So I don't see them buying out Chris Paul, to answer your question. I don't see that being an option. Okay. If anything, in terms of Chris Paul's future, they're now going to approach the offseason having that potential opt-out on his deal. He has the non-guaranteed clause for $30 million for next season. If the Warriors want to keep him around, that would be a hefty price to pay. It's much more likely that they either fully opt out of that or they look to move him for another trade and potentially upgrade their roster further heading into the 24-25 season.
All right, last question I got, and we can keep it short because I know you got to go. What is the one thing at this trade deadline that surprised you most of a team not doing something? Because for me, with all the talks that were out there, I swore the Chicago Bulls would do something. Like there was talks that it would be Drummond. There was talks that they were shopping Caruso. There was talks that Levine needed to be moved. DeRozan, like it seemed like everybody was on the table for Chicago, and Chicago was pretty silent throughout the whole thing. So is there any like team that surprised you that they didn't move or did move and you didn't expect them to?
Yeah, certainly the Chicago Bulls are at the top of that list. And then you look at the 76ers, they didn't really add any depth in their front court. When they were rumored to be targeting a few guys, Andre Drummond specifically could have been a buy low guy for them, could have brought him back to Philly after he spent some time there backing up Joel Embiid a few years ago. So I think that's kind of where you look at it. You look at the Sixers, and yeah, they got Buddy Hield, but you gave up all these second round picks moving forward that you could have used to facilitate other deals down the line. Obviously, the point of emphasis for them is that they still have all this upcoming cap space, and they're not only going to use it to extend Tyrese Maxey, but they're going to look to bring in another guy in the offseason to really bolster their chances of competing for a championship. While we're on the topic of the Bulls, though, we might as well just run down the list and talk about what happened there. You have Zach LaVine. He was on the market for the longest time. The Bulls were actively looking to move him for months. No trade really ever came up for them. I mean, they weren't going to give up LaVine just for the sake of trading him, sort of like Wiggins with the Warriors. But the thing with LaVine is that his contract is a lot to take back. It's $40 million a year, and it's for the next 4 seasons. So that's something that's going to be revisited in the offseason from the Bulls for sure. You had DeMar DeRozan in the final year of his contract. There were some teams showing interest in him, but the Bulls really weren't receiving any offers that they thought would be valuable, especially since the option of still extending DeRozan and keeping him around long-term presented itself to them. I do expect DeRozan to stick around and sign a new contract with the Bulls after he remained at the trade deadline. There were some rumors of Philly potentially being interested, but I was adamantly told by their organization that they had zero interest in trading for DeMar DeRozan, regardless of what other teams were saying. And then Alex Caruso, he was pursued by the Golden State Warriors right up to the very end of this trade deadline. The Warriors were looking to get a deal done there. The Bulls were asking for Jonathan Kuminga, and that's something that the Warriors just were not willing to give up. They had maintained an asking price of at least 2 first-round picks for Alex Caruso. No team in the league was really willing to give that up at this trade deadline. Ultimately, the Bulls stand pat. We'll see where they go from here because it seems like that there's a divide in that front office. Some believe that they should be rebuilding. Others, and those who are spearheading it, and ownership still believes that this team has what it takes to get to the playoffs. So the next 20 to 30 games are going to be very telling of what the future holds for the Chicago Bulls.
Man, Brett, thank you so much on the busiest day for you coming through and hanging out with us. Because trust me, I was about to jump into some, let's talk about Mikal Bridges in the future and the Knicks. We'll get you back for that one, all right? We can't take too much of that today. But for those of you in the chat, if you're not following Brett, what are you doing with your lives? Go check out our boy Brett. You can follow him on X at Brett. It's Brett Siegel NBA, right?
Correct.
On X, all right. We dropped the link in there, guys. Go check out our boy Brett. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, man.
Thank you, Brett.
I'm sure
Appreciate
you need a nap, a rest. Go do what you got to do, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, fellas. Thank you. Have a good one.
Later, bro.
Later,
yeah,
Brett.
buddy.
I didn't want to say this while we had our guest on, right? Because I felt it would have been rude and not classful or classless. But I almost fell on my face. I'm getting tired. Like this. I love this. I love you guys, but I'm getting tired. Phil,
I don't think I ever want to do this again.
Look, let me, I'm gonna tell y'all real quick. So Hector's sitting in his chair while we're getting ready for this stream, right? And he's like, and I see his eyes closed. He's like, "We got Dante tonight." He started naming people, and then he stopped. He's like, "Shit, who the hell else we got?" But he said with his eyes, he was like, "I don't know who else we got." I was like, "Man, you falling asleep?" But I mean, it's such a great day, guys. I mean, almost 10 hours straight of this. The community has been fantastic all day with us. Let me pull some of this stuff
close
up.
to 1K. We got close to 1K on the donations. We got 740. Very close to 1K. So if you guys can help us out over the next couple of days and shit, we got another stream tomorrow. I'll get our guest for tomorrow will be our friend Mr. Bill Pito.
We got Bill Pito in the morning. Who's gonna hang out? Phil, how you feeling about tonight, bro? And I don't mean getting sleep and hoping your kids sleep. How we feeling?
No,
about
I'm not getting any sleep at all. I actually walked out because Jonah woke up. So no sleep tonight. I have to leave here at like 9 o'clock to pick up Krista from the airport and then have an hour back. So we ain't going to bed at all tonight.
That's fun.
But for the game, honestly, like if I watch it, I watch it. I feel like we're gonna take an L. Like I feel like despite a miracle happening, like nobody's on our roster. Hopefully Jacob Toppin can see some minutes and get some like highlight dunk in there. But other than that, this is one of those games that we're in between players. I don't see much happening tonight at all.
Listen, if we win tonight, we're ready to jump out the window. We're managed to pull off a win with literally because what was the tweet, Hector? We found it before. Tom Thibodeau said we're fine, basically.
Yeah, he said we fine. We ready. We good for this shit.
We good.
And
he said he's jumping out the window. All right. Tibbs is there with us.
Alex, that shit is all the same for me.
Hold on. I'm trying to find exactly what he said because it had me dying. I think it was Fred Katz that put it out.
He said, "Nah, we good."
Yeah, we good. He said we got 8 people available tonight. We
That's
okay.
Good enough.
We good. I'm like, hey, that man sitting there talking about. Did y'all see the trade deadline today? Talk my shit. I'm Tom Thibodeau, damn it.
I'm gonna end it. My last thought. Shout out to Crackle Nuts as well. And if you guys can smack the like button, we got over 40 people in the building. We're sitting on 14 likes. Let's run the likes up. Smack the likes. Let's get it up to 50 likes for the stream. But like Crackle Nuts says. OG news sucks, but as long as Randle, OG, Mitch are back healthy, we are good. Crackle Nuts, 100%. And on that note,
It's 7:30. We got a Knicks game to watch. Appreciate you guys literally hanging out with our stupid asses for 10 hours today. Shout out to all our guests that came through. Shout out to everybody. We're going to keep doing duck races tomorrow after Bill's gone with more giveaways and do the ones from today with everybody. Guys, enjoy the Knicks game. On that note,
Deuces.
Deuces.